Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another Down and Dirty show. It's part two of transition to transgender. Scott, how are you? We've got our guest Joanne is back from last week to again to today. Gosh, I'm kind of kicking myself. I wish we would have done a whole month of this. There's so much. I feel, because we were talking before we came live, before we went live. Oh my goodness gracious. I feel so, I feel so lack of knowledge right now at this point. I don't know about you, Scott. I don't know how you're feeling. And this is a very, topic that I feel our whole world is so ignorant about.
You know what? Myself included. Um, and that's why, like, when you said we were going to have a recurring guest, I was pretty and kind of like, oh, Kim wants someone to come on repeatedly. But now that we, like, after last and just in the pre-talks, I'm so glad we're doing this because there's not enough time in a day to really delve into all of this at all.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that we, yeah, this is a really judgmental statement. And, by the way, we're broadcasting live at Bold Radio Station. And boy, I just opened right up and just jumped right on in because, of time is of essence here. But, eh, I think not just the topic of transgender and what bathrooms does a transgender child, young adult to you, the whole thing. Our country is still so damn ignorant in this 21st century on people's colors of skin and what church that they choose to get up and drive to on Friday at sundown. If you're if you're Jewish and going sundown on Friday, you're walking, or to driving to a brick and mortar on Sunday. I just feel we as a human race are still passing judgment, and we all pass judgment. I mean, it is, but I mean, we're passing judgment to the form of such horrible hate, hate, as opposed to stepping in to major curiosity. I want to. I'm like a 3-year-old kid. Why? Explain this to me. I'm seriously. I'm, and I'm very curious, and the reason why I stay so curious, it helps me lessen my judgment to also give space for another person. And to allow them to step up and to be open if they want. My thing is to know how to do a dance of not to be so curious. But you know what? This is mine and your show, Scott.
Yes.
And guess what? We get to be as curious and as much as we want. And we've got, and Joanne, who was on with us last week, who's here again with us today. I'm just going to say this before we go any further. Joanne has shared, since the show last week, we were having communications on an instant message on Facebook. And Joanne, you're so accepting to let Scott and I do and say and ask whatever we want, which is really, cool, because we have guests that come on. We have to clarify a couple of things. What's off guards? What's off limits? It's a respect for the guest, so Joanne, our guest, has just been ask away. So how you doing, Scott? I feel like I haven't talked to you in a long time.
Well, I accidentally called you like a week ago, right after the show, and you were listening to Sticks, but you having a good old time on a drive somewhere, and I accidentally called you, and I think that's the last time we spoke. But it was a good conversation. I was glad to have it. But I mean, the conversations that we have, even when we do talk behind the scenes, they are nothing in comparison to what we get to do here. And so I'm pumped. I'm stoked. I just want to get right in and start
let's jump in.
Pounding Joanne with questions, honestly. But
she can take it. Yeah, absolutely. So let's, Joanne, welcome back. Part 2. Welcome back to our second show here at Down and Dirty on Bold Radio Station. We're excited to have you back, and like I said, maybe this should have been a month long, a 4-part series, a month long. And I don't think even being a month long, we could have gotten everything, around. But boy, it's a good start. So, Joanne, thank you for being so gracious and coming, again here today, being with us. And welcome back. Please tell everybody quickly a little bit about yourself, just to refresh everyone's memory.
Well, thank you for having me back. I appreciate the opportunity to, I look at this as a teaching moment, and that's why I always say there are no questions that are off limits, because if you have these thoughts in your head, you surely that you might as well hear the truth from someone that's willing to tell you the truth, who's lived all this. And so that's why I do that. But as we talked about last week, I'm 71 and a half, be 72 my next birthday. I have known that I was, I guess, different, and then I was really a girl when I was 5 or 6 years old. I had a hard time dealing with it in school, and then I went off to college and graduated from the College of Business and Economics at University of Kentucky, and then went on to the UK Law School and graduated. And then I practiced law for 45 years as a trial lawyer representing injured people, and served on, as briefly on the Kentucky Supreme Court as a special justice. I've retired now, and I'm devoting the rest of my life to being an advocate, an activist, and educator on behalf of the transgender community.
And it's absolutely phenomenal. And I'm going to share with everybody. When you were talking a couple times last week, my eyes watered up a little bit, and then you were thanking me in a private message, and you're just so gracious, Joanne. And you said something about your activism, which we're going to get into here. And then you said to me, you typed in an instant message, and Scott, I think I forgot to share this with you, but Joanne, you said, "I am living the dream." And I just went, oh my God, how many people out there can't even begin to even say that, let alone freaking feel that? And it just, my eyes are watering up a little bit again, because not a lot of people can step in and say, I am living the dream, and what you have endured to come to this dream. And not only are you living the dream, Joanne, but man, oh man, you're really helping a lot of other people step into that as well. I just think it's so, I think it's really, I'm in awe again, and I just think it's so amazing.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Excuse me. This is a dream of mine since I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Here in Kentucky, we have allergies, and we have that constantly. And so I'm one of those that suffer from the drainage from allergies constantly. And even though I take allergy shots and medications, I still have allergies, and it's along with everybody else in Kentucky. But yes, I'm living a dream that I never thought would come true. And lo and behold, it did. And I feel so blessed that it did come true, that I want to try to give back and help those that will follow me. So that's kind of the way I look at it. I've always been someone who tried to help others, whether it was practicing law, whether it was just trying to, as I said, before my church abandoned me, I was very active there. And since I've transitioned, I have been almost constantly involved with so many organizations and groups that are trying to make a difference. And so that's kind of what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So let's jump right on in, Scott, if you don't mind. Let's just jump right in. You're very, Joanne, you are doing a lot of activism around legislation, around this transgender and everything like that. So tell us, let's just begin. Just tell us a little bit about your activism and how it came, you really know.
Hello?
We lost you. Where'd
Go
you go?
to it. Hello. Oh, you lost me?
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yep, you're
Yeah.
good now.
Wow. Is it my? Okay. Well, anyways, so Joanne, go ahead and jump on in and tell us about your activism and how you got involved.
Well, I never really set out to be an activist at all. But because of my notoriety as in my former life and being involved in as an attorney and doing just being a social public figure, people were curious, and soon as people found out that I was in the process of transitioning, I became number one on the gossip parade, and I kept hoping for a scandal so I could be number two. But I think to some degree I'm still number one on the gossip parade. And so in order to combat that, I've decided to be as open as possible. So before I decided to do this, I was just trying to meet people one-on-one and talk to them about what I was doing, and then that seemed like there weren't enough hours in the day to do that. So that's when the newspapers put these big articles about me on the paper, and then because of that, that led to other things, and I was invited to become a board member on the Kentucky Fairness Alliance, which is an LGBT organization that did advocacy work in Kentucky. And so that was the first group that and they contacted me. And I didn't even know who they were. And so eventually, they were calling me and writing me, and I said, "Why do you all want me?" And they said, "Well, because you are already an activist." And I said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Well, you may not realize it, but you are known now all over the state of Kentucky for what you're doing and what you are going through. And we would like to have you on our board of directors." And I thought, okay. And so I became a board member. And then eventually, a couple of years later, we decided to merge with the Fairness Campaign in Louisville, which was probably a larger LGBT advocacy group. And so at the time we did that, I was vice president. I went from just being asked to be a board member to within less than 2 years, I was vice president. And while I was vice president, we merged with the Fairness Campaign. And so then I became a board member on the Fairness Campaign in Louisville, which has become the biggest leading advocate for the LGBT community in Kentucky. And so that's been good. And then I had an opportunity as a result of some of that to apply to be a board member on the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education's Committee on Equal Opportunity, which is a big, long name for their diversity committee. And this particular organization, the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education, sets the agenda and the strategic plan for Kentucky's 8 state universities and 16 community colleges. And when I got on that group, I was selected, and because I filled up a lot of things that they were looking for diversity. And so I was basically a post-op transgender lesbian woman. And so it was the first LGBT person to ever serve on this group. In fact, I'm still the only person that's ever served on this group. And when I got on this group, I realized that the definition of diversity that they were using, which they started in 2010, only included sexual orientation, but did not include gender identity or gender presentation. And so I made that a project to get gender identity and gender presentation added to our definition, because that entails, certain rights and privileges if you're one of the select groups that's part of the diversity definition. And you would think that would be simple for a diversity group, but it took me over 2 years of constant talking, playing politics with them, educating them as to what transgender meant. And so eventually, on April the 28th, I believe it was, of 2014, they unanimously voted to change the definition of diversity to include gender identity and gender presentation. And when I got on this board, and this particular group, we have meetings throughout the year, and each university and the community college system in Kentucky, when I say university, each state university has representatives there. They have diversity directors, and they come and report to us and tell us what's going on. What are you all doing to increase diversity on your campus? And of course, it's not just trans or LGBT people. We're trying to close the achievement gaps, for African Americans and whites and Hispanics and whatnot. And so our committee does a lot of activities. And so once we got that changed, I felt like that was a major milestone of my legislative work. And it's going to pave the way for a lot of other things that will happen. And because I got that done, now the diversity directors come and tell us, and they always look at me and tell me all the things that they're doing on their campus in furtherance of the LGBT community, and especially the trans community. And when I first got on, nobody wanted to ever mention the word transgender. And so I have changed their way of thinking. Most of our diversity directors in Kentucky were African American, and so they have an organization called the Kentucky Association of Blacks in Higher Education, and so I started going to their meetings and became a speaker at their meetings, because I needed their help to get the things that I was trying to do going on their campuses. And so that I felt like sometimes when I go to their annual meetings, and I'm probably the only white person there, but I have been well received, and because it's all about diversity. And so I'm an advocate for all diversity, really, not just LGBT or trans diversity. And so I constantly preach diversity and inclusion. That's led to we have the Kentucky Bar Association had its first summit. They called it a summit, but it was a conference on diversity and inclusion. And I was the speaker there. And so now we are planning for the 2017 Kentucky Bar Association Conference on Diversity and Inclusion, and I'm now on the planning or the steering committee that's trying to put that together. And so I've spoken to so many different state universities, women's and gender studies, public speaking, I spoke to the law school on how to practice law. How does a transgender person practice law? What all have you encountered? And right now, I'm on a group that at the University of Louisville. University of Louisville is the first university medical school in the United States to add LGBT medicine to part of their curriculum, and that's they started last year in their medical school teaching doctors how to take care of LGBT people, and they're trying to expand that to the nursing program and to the allied health services program. And because of that, and being on one of their committees, and I'm trying to get the same thing done at the University of Kentucky, and so it's just like one thing has led to another, and I'm kind of right in the middle of all of it, and I'm just this has become my passion, because I don't want young children, teenagers, young adults, and to have to live like I did because of their transgender.
Mm-hmm. I think that's important. I think everything that you say, Joanne, is priceless. But I think that is one of the most priceless things that can be said out there. I'm gonna just say this out loud right now. For something's going on here with my PC and my internet, so I'm gonna step back, Scott, and I'm gonna let you kind of lead the way so that I'm not bleeping in and out and going crazy.
No worries. I've got a lot of questions, so this would be really good. I didn't even think of that, Joanne. Like, as far as doctors and nurses and all of that, like the bedside manner must have to take into account, because I think about it like everyone just kind of assumes that, people are married. I walk into a medical establishment or wherever, and people ask me, how's your girlfriend or how's your wife or whatever? Do you have children and all that? And I mean, that's gotta really, when you're transgender, like, and you walk into a place and you're treated like everyone else, that's got to be weird. So I didn't even think that was
the problem. The problem is that you're not treated like everyone else.
I suppose, but like people make these assumptions that like automatically because you look like a woman, you're a woman, and they don't even get into, and I understand that's the goal here, but like on your medical chart, it would say male, correct? And then
it could or it could not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Okay, yeah, you just opened up a whole door for my ignorance. So like I'm pumped now. Like let's get into this a little bit. Like that's something that like I don't even know what the experience would be like for someone transgender to go into a hospital or a doctor's office, and what goes into what's being taught now versus what should be taught about the whole situation.
Well, we're stressing in Kentucky for the next 5 years as part of our strategic educational plan. We're stressing cultural competency, and a lot of people don't know what that means. And even people on my committee or board with the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education, why do we want to teach cultural competency? And the reason is because universities are graduating school teachers and doctors and lawyers and nurses who leave with their own prejudices. Everybody has prejudices. And teaching cultural competency is an attempt to get people to understand their own prejudices and to try to understand how other people in other cultures live and how to take care and how to be nice to people. And I mean, we have situations where a lot of doctors, if you are transgender and you go to the doctor, you're treated terribly. Some doctors refuse to see people that are transgender. We had a situation in Georgia several years ago where a trans man developed ovarian cancer. And the trans man had ovarian cancer. And this person lived in the Atlanta area and went to, 25 different doctors looking for help. And no one would accept this person because they were transgender. And that trans man ultimately died from ovarian cancer because no one would take care of him.
Oh, my God.
And we've had situations where trans women have been in automobile accidents. And when the EMTs came, they refused to touch or help or do anything because the person was a trans woman. And we have stuff like this that goes on all the time that I guess people don't realize just what does go on.
So how do they know? I mean,
trying to change.
Joanne, how do they know? I mean, God forbid, let's say I'm a transgendered woman and I get in a car accident and, ambulances, they're all showing up and then they refuse to touch me because I'm a transgendered woman. How do they know? I mean, how is that all determined? Because that's a state of an emergency. I mean, when you're in a car accident and EMT and firefighter and police and all that, that's in an emergency. So how do they know this? For them to determine not to move forward.
Well, let me tell you, when we talk about trans people, just the word trans covers an awful lot of territory. And it means different things to different groups of people. I'm one of those, the small group, a very, very small group, that has actually undergone surgery.
Okay.
And had my genitals changed.
Okay.
And probably only around 5% or less have ever had the opportunity to have surgery. I'm saying it's less than 5%.
Mm-hmm.
And so what about the other folks? Well, for money reasons, for lack of insurance, they're unable to undergo gender surgery. And so they may live as trans men or trans women, but their body hasn't been changed. They may be on hormones, but they still have, trans men may still have uteruses and vaginas, and some still have their breasts. And because I think you all were talking about this, I think last week you told me about running into a 17-year-old that was beginning to bind her breast, or his breast.
Yeah.
And so, the majority of trans people do not have surgery, and so when they're in an accident, it's fairly obvious if doctors look or they could,
Yeah.
And it's also important to know because when they run certain types of lab work on people, they really need to know whether you were assigned male at birth or assigned female, because the lab work has different values for the gender. And having changed surgery, doesn't change all of those things. And so, that's important to know. And I think I told you, or maybe I did, that I've had to teach my own physician how to take care of me. And before the University of Louisville, I started this inclusion of LGBT medicine. So they're trying to teach their doctors, and this is part of cultural competency too, how to take care of our community. She was the one that would go out there and maybe talk to med students for an hour, and that's all the training they got. And lo and behold, I'm the one that was giving her the information on how to teach or how to teach the students. So I was doing the medical research for her on trans people, and I've educated her. And how do I do that? I read constantly. And so I'm always searching for new studies or new medical opinions on different aspects of being transgender. I also study and research every legal issue that comes up with trans. I also study and research how to counsel people. It's like I have this desire for knowledge, and I can't stand it if I don't know the answer to most everything. So
I'm curious, like you've gotten onto these boards, you've participated and made massive changes. Like you've been, I think it's safe to say you've been a spearhead in your community and in the trans community in general to making changes and again, having your finger on the pulse of the litigation, the medical side of things like you just mentioned. Have you experienced backlash because of how active you're being?
Not to my face exactly. I've had backlash because I'm now the vice president of my local Democratic Women's Club from Republicans who are making fun of Democratic women for having me as their vice president. Next year I'll be president. Stop and think about that for a minute. Here I am going to be. I'm currently. They wanted me to be president this year, and I said not till after this election. And because I could
smart.
just see the newspaper headlines right now, so
Yeah.
I said, "Let's wait." They didn't even realize or even think about these things, but I do think about these things, and so I'm in addition to my doing things for the trans community, I'm going. I'm moving into mainstream. With just living my life amongst everyone else. A lot of trans people never get out into what I call mainstream. They continue to associate and with each other a lot and they have these. There are all kinds of groups across the country that cater to trans people, and they do things together. But I don't really participate in those. I'm out here participating in things that I can do, and I'm enjoying being vice president of my Democratic Women's Club, and I was a pledged delegate on behalf of Hillary Clinton at our Kentucky State Democratic Convention, and I'm just having a wonderful time playing politics and continuing. Tomorrow I go to Louisville and speak to the Louisville Women's Lawyer Association. Last weekend I went to a Democratic meeting, district meeting, and then I went on to another meeting in Frankfort where I'm on a group called the Kentucky Youth Law Project, which is trying to provide legal services and advocacy for indigent LGBT children. Excuse me. So I work with children. I work with old people. We had a couple of conferences. We had one in 2014 and 2015. So that was part of the Lexington, Kentucky Fairness campaign group, and so there was a group called the Senior Pride Initiative, which put on conferences for aging LGBT people and the problems that they have dealing with doctors and lawyers and hospitals and nursing homes and services for trans or lesbians or gay people. There's all this prejudice, and so a lot of people don't even go to the doctor when they need to because of the treatment they get. And so I was asked to speak at that in 2014, and then the next year I'm on their planning committee, and then I teach cultural competency at the 2015 conference that they put on, and then I got an award for having made the largest educational contribution to the LGBT community in Kentucky in 2015. I've got that trophy sitting here right by my side. And So this is some of the things that I do. I mean, it's I've tried to help our older community. I've tried to help the younger community. I've been a spokesperson at our governor's. The governor has a conference each year on equal economic opportunity, and so I was their keynote speaker, and when I taught what it means to be a transgender worker to all these administrative people and human resource people, and that took a whole day. And that's why I know you were talking about you can't answer all these questions in an hour or even 2 hours with 2 shows. I've been asked to put together. I haven't done it yet, but so I have enough materials. I could teach courses at the universities for several semesters on issues that come up in our community.
Yeah, I'm sure. Something. I'm still a little stuck back on the comment of a motorcycle accident or anything like that. With our laws here in the United States, Scott, I know you're from Canada, but with our laws here in the United States, a person who does not carry health insurance at this point, who has an emergency and goes to the hospital, we have a no turn away law here. The hospital has to accommodate that person. And I just don't understand if they're a transgender. I mean, are these hospitals now saying, oh God, no, and or the nurse that walks into them with the physician, oh no, or on the scene of the accident. I didn't think, Joanne, I seriously didn't think that, by the laws that they could say no. I mean,
isn't it human rights at that point?
What they do is they say, we don't know how to take care of you.
Oh, that's so full of shit. I mean, that is so full of shit.
That's exactly what it is. That's what they say but what they really mean is we don't want to take care of you.
Yes.
And these are things. This is why all these things that I'm trying to do are important. There are things out there that most people don't have any conception of or idea that things are like this. I do, and I'm trying to change them.
Yeah.
My face is like frozen in disgust right now. I've got my head in my hands, and my face is frozen in disgust.
Even in my legal community, there are very few lawyers that want to represent a trans person, and they don't have to. But you can't. Trans people can hardly find anyone to take care of them. Lesbians and gay men have the same problem. You can't find lawyers that want to represent them because they just don't like those people. And it's a bad. I mean, if you do get in to a hospital or a doctor will see you, the staff may call them by the wrong pronoun or the wrong name. They may make fun of them. They may snicker, and it makes it so embarrassing that trans people just don't want to put up with it.
It's ridiculous to me.
So they just don't get medical care. And that's what we're trying to change.
Like, excuse me for being a little on the crude side here, but who cares what your genitals look like or who you're attracted to? At the end of the day, you're still a human being. Like, I don't care if your genitals have been surgically transformed into a lotus flower. You still deserve to be treated for something, Like, if you've got cancer,
a lot of the medical facilities in Kentucky are owned and operated by either the Catholics or the Southern Baptists.
Mm.
And they refuse to do things that go against their religion, and being trans goes against their religion.
Well, being a lot of things goes against a lot of those religions, and those religions too, not necessarily Catholicism, but I mean, a lot of these religions are also, if you are not a part of that religion, then you're some outcast and should be killed. I mean, that's what's going on, quite frankly, with a lot of these religions. They're teaching hate. And I just want to know, since when or judgment, like what happened to you, Joanne, with your church, that you grew up in. They turned their back on you. Since when? That's why I don't get in a car and drive to a brick and mortar for church, because there's still people running that church, and you still have got judgment and that horrificness of hate going on in specific churches and religions. I want to take a turn here, Scott, if I could, because it seems
Absolutely.
like now my internet is a little bit more stable. I'm not quite sure what was going on there, but Joanne, I like to post, and we were talking about this right tinchly before we went live. I like to post on your Facebook page today regarding in Colorado this adorable, beautiful young girl in elementary school. They did not allow her. They were not going to allow her to use the girls' facilities. Now, let me say this. And the young girl's name is Coy, and at birth, was a boy. Coy Mathis was born a boy, but since 18 months old, the parents had recognized that he was showing signs of identifying as a girl and was gravitating towards, more feminine things that are usually associated with a girl. I've got the article pulled up in front of me, and it's interesting because Coy's passport and state-issued identification recognizes her as a female, and the school is saying, no, you cannot use the girls' facilities. This is where this little girl has to go to the bathroom. She would be allowed, this is in December 2012, she would be allowed to use the boys' bathroom, gender neutral facility bathrooms, or the nurse's bathroom. Okay, if that's not segregation at its finest, shit, I don't know what is. So what do you think about all that? I mean, this has all been overturned, thank goodness. But, I mean, talk about some amazing parents of this young girl, really standing up, supporting their daughter, hiring proper experts, like lawyers or even people like yourself. I'm not quite sure if you've been in contact with them, to help support them and represent them to move through this, to give Coy her rights that she, quite frankly, deserves.
Well, this is what the North Carolina's House Bill 2 and all of the controversy over the bathrooms. This is what all this is about, and this is the issue, and it's probably not going to be settled until it gets to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Recently in Virginia, there was a young trans boy assigned female at birth. I'm not going to say born a girl. I'm going to say assigned female. And the child basically came out and said, "I'm a boy," and and then goes by a boy's name, his name changed. And this is in Virginia. And, of course, it was having problems with the school. Actually, things were okay. The school was letting the child go to the boys' bathroom until some of the parents found out.
Yeah.
And when they found out, they started raising holy hell. And so then the school board changed the policy to say, no, you can't go to the boys' bathroom. You have to go to and this child is a boy. I mean, if you look at pictures, they're on by the way, they're on my internet page or my Facebook page. But, this is a male. If you look at him, he identifies as male. He acts as male. If he didn't tell you that he once was assigned female at birth, you wouldn't know. And yet the school system wants to make this male go into a girl's bathroom, or you can go into the janitor's bathroom, or which may be in 2 other buildings away. But it's discrimination against trans people. Mm-hmm. And it's like this particular case was in the Fourth Circuit, which includes North Carolina and Virginia. And the Court of Appeals in North Carolina recently ruled that this particular child does have the right to go to the boys' bathroom. And so that case is being appealed to the Supreme Court. And so, things like this are going on. And it's like I said, it's not the children or the students that are really objecting all that much. It's their Southern Baptist Catholic parents that are so hung up on this, because God didn't make a mistake, and you can't, if you're assigned, if you have a penis, you're a boy. If you have a vagina, you're a girl. But that doesn't always is not the case. That's not the only determinant of sex. And yet, in the eyes of most people, yes, you have a penis, you're a boy. You have a vagina, you're a girl. And the medical research is finding out that that's not necessarily the case. And it's like, all these things happen while you're still in the womb, between the 8th and 24th week of pregnancy. Initially, the body will I think it's around the 8th week, starts making the external or internal genitalia, and later on, then the brain is hardwired to be either male or female, due to things that take place during pregnancy. And for most people, things line up correctly. But for trans people, there's a disconnect between what the brain thinks and what the body looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And they're finding this out. This is not a choice. This is the way you're actually born. And they're realizing that now. They've done all kinds of studies. They don't exactly know that. They know that it's probably due to hormonal bursts during pregnancy that are supposed to change signals and make the body develop one way or the other. But trans girls have the brain of a girl but the body of a boy, and trans boys have the body of a girl but the brain of a boy.
So forgive my wording on this, just because I'm curious how this comes back to you, and we can get back onto the sexual orientation. But before I lose my question, I want to ask, we're talking about bathrooms, we're talking about people who are trans and which bathrooms they're allowed to go into and how it's such a hot button issue, and we're talking about young people. But Joanne, in your case, like when you transitioned, and even though you went through the surgeries and you got your genitalia, changed over, was it one of those things where like there's still stigma there, or are you able to like burst into a ladies' room and be like, I am woman and this is where I pee? Like, is it still one of those things where like you have to be careful about where you use the washroom? Like, that's ridiculous to me.
Well, a lot of legislatures and politicians are saying that, okay, we will accept you if you've had surgery. If I have a vagina now, and I've never had a problem. I've never had a problem when I visit a facility. But then again, this goes to another issue, and that's whether or not the trans person can, quote, pass. Not every trans person can pass as a female or a male, depending upon whether they're trans women or trans men. A lot of trans women don't have the wherewithal or the money to have facial surgery or to have vaginal surgery. And so they are the ones, people like me, we don't have problems. And if, I don't have to worry about bathrooms, but I do the things I do, not for me, but for those that are unable to have the benefit or the luxury of the things that I've been able to afford.
Yes.
That's what I'm doing.
So like you could have the makeup. hormonally, and you could have the feelings and you could have the identifying traits, but if you don't have the jawline of a woman, you can like what? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
It's
ridiculous.
it's really interesting. So, my husband's in the insurance industry here in Michigan, and one of his accounts here, Atlanta, and outside of San Jose. He was going in and doing some open enrollments with the employees up in San Jose, and there was a man transitioning into a transgender woman, and the topic of questions and conversation was at the point of the transition, and now are there options with the insurance benefits? And my husband so respectfully said, "I'm not in my office. I got to get back on in." I said, and he said, "But let's remove this conversation off of when I respond back and get back in the office, off of corporate emails. May I please have your personal email just until we resolve all of this?" Unfortunately, insurance does not cover, and that's a lot of the trials and tribulations that I'm hearing from people is such. Not only, Joanne, did you share, the long endurance of surgery, but how painful the surgery is, but oh my God, the finances up to that point. And plus to get through that point, the money. So, my husband and I were talking about this last week, and I said, this really bothers me that, we can have, so much going on here in our country alone with this presidential election, and so many opinions of this person, not this and that, and blah, blah, blah. And, and this person gets this and doesn't get that and stuff. But I don't understand how, insurance is not becoming more savvy and up to speed with offering more benefits for situations like this. And he said, they're not today, but you're going to see within about 2 years, they will be offering beneficial support from the insurance companies for surgeries, which is really, which I was like, wow. That's amazing. Let's hope that happens.
Yeah, well, until there's a law that says you have to offer these things, most insurance companies aren't going to do it voluntarily.
Yes.
Now, my cousin who works for Lockheed Martin in Denver as an aeronautical engineer, who's working on the Orion project right now, her Lockheed Martin furnished surgery up to a certain, dollar amount, and she was able to have her surgery pretty much paid for. And because she worked with a company that valued its transgender employees. And, she's not the only one. But she's my cousin, and she's a blend. So, and so the problem is most businesses don't even want to hire a trans person. So they have no choice. They have no way to even get health insurance because they don't have a job, because nobody will hire a trans person. This is this prejudice that I'm trying to deal with cultural competency. And it may take several generations before this is resolved. But
how can they not hire a transgender person? That's discrimination. That's like a company saying, "Oh, well, I'm not going to hire Scott because he's a Caucasian." For God's sakes, that's crazy.
Well, it may be crazy, but there's no law that was one of the things that they were trying to do with INDA. In federal legislation to make it a law that you can't discriminate, and it's never been able to get passed by Congress because of the Republican Party.
Wow.
So
interesting.
This is a real issue.
Yeah. The whole thing is just very, 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 very interesting. I'm shaking my head. Scott, I don't know what you, but I'm shaking my head. I've got my forehead's bruised. I'm shaking my head from hitting my forehead with my hand, going, "Oh my God, oh my God." Okay, so gosh, I cannot believe we are like almost out of time already, and just like
That did
last
not
week,
take long.
this went by way too fast. Um, so Joanne, first of all, can you let everybody know once again how they can get in touch with you?
Uh, I think you have my Facebook address, don't you?
Yes, I
I
do.
think. Well, I know we're Facebook friends,
Yes,
but
we certainly are.
on
But
Facebook
let
on
our listeners
on
know how they
face,
can get in touch with you.
okay. On Facebook, uh, you can uh, search and try to for Joanne Joanne Wheeler Wheeler Bland Bland, and I think I'm the only one on all of Facebook with that name. And so if you send me a friend request and tell me something about, or even send me a message first to tell me that you have questions about uh, what it means to be trans, or that you listen to your all's program or something like that, I'll always respond to those. And so I'll be glad to do that.
Of
And
course,
if you
too.
find later on that if you want to do more stories or have the time, we could try to set it up for in the future, but it's whatever you all want to do. I realize that, we never have enough time.
No.
We never, there's so much here. I mean, this is a new civil rights movement that's going on right now. We're in the middle of it. And, I'm just happy to be a part of it.
I also want to come out and say that, like, if anybody wants to connect with Joanne and can't search her up, if you're connected with Kim or myself, I can't speak for Kim, but I know myself, I would happily
Yes.
bridge that gap and make the
Yep.
connection.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, do not hesitate to reach out to any three of us. And if you want an introduction to Joanne, we'll be more than happy to assist with that. So I want to, one last quick question here. We have a few minutes left. So obviously, Joanne, your driver's license state identification recognizes you as a woman. Were you ever able to change your birth certificate?
I have not changed it. I probably should. Uh, each state has a different policy or law on birth certificates. I was born in Alabama, and the state of Alabama will amend the birth certificate but will not change it. State of Kentucky will actually, if you've had, first of all, they won't do it unless you've had surgery, gender surgery. So, and because we're the very small percentage of us have had the surgery, the majority can't get their driver's license gender marker changed or their birth certificate changed until they've had surgery. And even some states, like I think there are 4 of them now, Tennessee's one, where they will absolutely not change your birth certificate no matter what. And so this is another big issue that we're facing and having to deal with. Now, my driver's license says I'm female. I have a court order that says that I have transitioned and I am now to be seen and recognized totally as being transgender. I have letters from my surgeon who did the surgery who says that I've had irreversible surgery and I'm now female. And but most trans people, because of the no insurance and don't have $100,000 to have surgery, can't do this.
Yep.
And this is a real shame. I mean, I've lived a charmed life in a way. I say charmed because I had the money to to go through this process. And people are upset with Caitlyn Jenner because they say, well, she's had all this money and she's had facial surgery. She hadn't had lower surgery, but she's had facial surgery.
Yep.
And but I've had more surgery than most anyone. I've had the best of everything. And so I am a very unique person. And my story is different from most folks because of the fact that I was blessed to have had the money and the knowledge and the wherewithal and the ability, the emotional stability to go through this. And the majority of people don't. And that's what I'm trying to do, is help those. I get called on every day with questions regarding, I'm trying to change the gender marker on my driver's license. And so my question is, what state are you in? Well, have you had surgery? No. Well, if you're in Kentucky, you can't get your gender marker changed. So, and each state has a different set of rules. And I do have a copy of every state's different rules. I've got that somewhere here. But my inventory of material is so big that I can't tell you for each state in particular, but I can tell you for Kentucky.
Kim, before we close out the show, I just
Yes.
want to say this. I've never told a guest on the air this before. Joanne, I love you, lady. You're amazing.
Yes.
You're the first guest I've told on the air that I love them.
Well, I don't know what to say.
I love everything you're doing and how you're making it. Even though you have, quote unquote, the privilege of money and having this career and everything, you've worked so hard for, it's not about that for you. You're working for the people who don't. And I seriously love that quality in a person. So I love that about you. You're amazing.
I agree. I truly agree. You are really amazing, Joanne, and I am just so elated for you that you are living the dream, and you don't even have a selfish bone in you. You are so self-fulfilling, and to help others fulfill and live out their dreams in in a transition, and especially in a world that is just shaking their head over all of this. I mean, there's so much, not just religious, but there's so many cultures where they disown. And Joanna, and I know you have a couple family members that will not talk with you and stuff like that, but there are cultures that can't even fathom this and will just completely disown their own flesh and blood, their child, that is choosing to go through this. So, and it's a very costly, expensive surgery transition to endure and go through. So so a lot of people cannot even get to those final stages, Joanne, like you were able to. So, that's so cool that you are, sharing all of this and helping others. I mean, I feel like no words can really express this. Personally, for me, no words can really express this. It's just not enough. And thank you for doing what it is that you're doing.
Thank you all for giving me the opportunity just to try to educate some more. I relish these opportunities, and I hope that perhaps someone will be helped by what has been said. They may not be trans, but they may know someone that's trans, and if you do know someone that's trans, even though you aren't, be nice to them. Realize that they're really stressed out, and the stress comes because we live in a society that doesn't accept who we are, and until that happens, trans people are going to continue to be discriminated against and marginalized and treated badly. Mm-hmm. And so I tell people you've heard of Johnny Appleseed throwing seeds down, hoping something will grow. Well, I'm Joanne Appleseed, and I'm going around telling my story and trying to tell as many people as I can and answer questions. hoping that at least a few of the things that I've said will resonate with people or give hope to some that are without hope.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you loud and clear. Thank you so much for Joanne for joining us a second week in a row to talk about this. It's a very I want to say this. God, this is such an intimate topic, but yet it is so out there because there's just everybody there's so many people upside down about just the bathroom situation and just all of the just a person in general transitioning, the judgments and the stigmas and the shouldn't and the shoulds and all that should be not taking place. I mean, but it is what it is, unfortunately, and hopefully we can Joanne Appleseed can plant some seeds and make some intense changes. And something tells me, Joanne, you already are making some wonderful changes out there and helping young kids that are suicidal over this and talking them out of that suicide, and adults. And I keep doing what you're doing. Please keep doing what you're doing.
I wouldn't know what to do otherwise. This has become the remaining passion of my life is to do what I'm doing.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, thank you again, Joanne. And hey, Scott, thanks for taking the lead here today with my internet going wonky wookie. I don't know what was going on with all that.
I don't know, but we made it through, and it was a great show regardless. And you came back, which is the important part. You didn't give up. Your internet didn't stop you. So I love it. It was a good show. I'm pumped that today happened because and like Joanne said, any chance that we get to jump in and be educated, I'll take it, because there's just no excuse for ignorance anymore.
No, this whole ignorance stuff has just it just really has to stop. And and be ignorant, but step up and say, okay, I'm being ignorant and I just have a question and I'm unsure and I'm unclear and I don't know what this is and whatever. But to stay ignorant and then start throwing judgments and nasty comments and just get into that hate after that is just enough is enough. So thank you everybody today for joining us on another Down and Dirty show here at Bold Radio. Stay tuned, same place, same time next week with another guest. And again, Scott, what a great show. And we ran over and we can, and I hope everybody that was tuning in or that couldn't tune in while we were live, that will tune in later on when the link is ready, that they take multiple things away from part 1 and part 2 of these 2 shows.
I'm stealing your catchphrase, Kim. Everybody, make it a good week.
Yeah. See you later, everybody.
Cheers.